Anyone else get that feeling about halfway through a horror movie and realize, oh, this isn't scary at all? Yeah, me too. And that's why I started this series of 6 horror movies that are actually scary. So enjoy the video, comment with your picks, and if I missed any, be sure to check out the other 8 videos in this playlist. Let's do this! First is 2020's The Dark and the Wicked. Centered on a pair of siblings taking care of their parents on a farm, the film is equally dedicated to the drama surrounding caregiving and grief as it is the supernatural horror. There's a bit of a tennis volley going on here with the story. And yeah, sorry, I just started playing tennis and need to get my head out of the baseline, but it does feel like a back and forth. Drama scene, horror scene. And the greedy part of me wanted more horror. But the reason I wanted more isn't because the drama didn't work. It's well acted and depressingly genuine. Especially for me. Without getting into detail, I have been in a similar situation with a relative. But I wanted more because those horror moments were very disturbing. I enjoyed how much Dark and the Wicked explore different avenues for the scares. Self-mutilation, a gory massacre, a creepy person at the door, a demented apparition. You get a bit of everything. What's important is that when I mentioned this back and forth, Dark and the Wicked still retains a steady mood of despair. This is a damp, dark, decrepit world, and whether it's a spooky scene in a barn or just 2 siblings sharing a cigarette by porch light, there's a constant feeling of being stuck and waiting for the axe to fall. The film proves, yet again, how vital camera movement and framing is to this genre. The reveal of a certain death is just perfect. It also gets a lot of mileage out of the farm setting. But what tipped Dark and the Wicked into this slot was a specific sequence where a character seems to be glitching. Their voice is crackly, as if speaking through an old radio, and the mouth movements don't match the sounds. That freaked me out. I'm glad more modern horror movies are tapping into the weirdness of horror. Simple jump scares and typical monsters are done to death, but showing us something off-putting, off-balance, and just plain off works a new kind of horror muscle. The Dark and the Wicked is a solid horror drama that doesn't forget the unexpected. Next is the stop-motion film Mad God from 2021. I understand some people watching this just went, ugh, or rolled their eyes hard enough to power a pinwheel. It may seem absurd to consider any kind of animation scary, but for me, practically anything can be scary if used in the right way. There is a plot of sorts, but honestly, it doesn't even matter. You can watch this as a collage of horrors and the effect will be the same. One scene after another, you will see something sick that you've never seen or thought of before. Depraved is the word of the day. Many films have done their own interpretation of hell, and this is how I would picture hell if it existed. It's not about the fires, or the demons, or that time Awkwafina rapped in the Disney remake.
I blow up the pigeons, but those are just urban legends. I know a lot of really fat pigeons.
It's a city powered by endless suffering, and in its shadows, the population run around like strays and live off perversions you could only have nightmares about. Around every corner is something awful. And as epic as the film is, and as much as they show, by the end you feel like there are so many manhole covers of terror that the film didn't lift up to show you. Mad God managed to do something I didn't think was possible, and that's being so disgusting and sinful that it scared me. The separator, why this film worked for me, is because it was gut-wrenching in such an original way. It's not every day you see an ape-like creature chained to a metal slab, crying for help while a gold-plated doll watches it and masturbates.
Jesus Christ!
Of course, this freedom of creating practically anything horrific comes in a big part from the stop-motion animation, which looks wonderfully hideous. Everything looks like an amalgamation of trash. It's like a separate Big Bang happened and went really badly. It's kind of a stock word, but Mad God is very cinematic. Its lighting and camera work make the world seem bigger than it really is. The film does a good job establishing what you're in for pretty fast. First with a section from the book of Leviticus, which you can best describe as the potential school shooter of the Bible. And then we see a container going down, down, and further down, basically telling the audience that we're starting this story from the worst possible point. Some horror is like a beer with friends, others like a cocktail that sneaks up on you. Mad God is like drinking from that spill tray on the bar counter. Next is Mora. I was honestly starting to panic when making this list. I had a slot open even heading into October. By sheer luck, I came across this short film, and to borrow a phrase from Apocalypse Now, it really put the hook in me. It follows an artist who's struggling to get work because clients would rather use AI. Instead of wallowing in pity, he learns about the legend of Mora, a woman who inexplicably shows up in multiple AI-generated images as long as the search queries are disgusting enough. The goal? Try to trace the original image of Mora and discover how and why this is happening, and maybe get a name for himself in the process. I have strong feelings on AI. That being said, the creator of Mora had the right idea of how to incorporate AI, by not only not hiding it, but making it integral to the story. And best of all, when it comes to the non-AI content, dear lord, I was not expecting the visual effects to be this polished. There's a scene here involving an eyeball that looks fantastic. It's straight out of Hollywood, and I was clenching my teeth the entire time. Most of the visuals I can't show you, but suffice it to say that much of the horror comes from these grisly images, and the main character's quest sets up a nice rhythm. He types in a horrific prompt full of gore and corpses and maggots, and then we watch the screen load and wait, wanting to look but not wanting to at the same time, and it's always worse than you'd expect. When they show the origin of Mora, it's very upsetting, and I loved how this wrapped up. In its suspense and violent imagery, Mora left me a bit shaken. And for that, and just how professionally this was stitched together, I give this a big recommendation. Next is the Boiled One phenomenon. It's a short film that acts as a solid rep of analog horror, a subgenre I've never really talked about. Think of it like a mix of a creepypasta, aka internet horror folklore, and found footage. Many of them comprise of lost instructional videos and emergency announcements that have been haunted, corrupted, and dug up somewhere. Analog horror started around the early 2000s, and it acts as a fascinating time capsule when people still had a lot of VHS tapes and were starting to use the internet in daily life. The Boiled One phenomenon creeped me out mostly because of the story. Much of it is composed of text and basic images, describing a nature show broadcast that had been hijacked by some malignant entity. I found the concepts so engaging that I became instantly invested. The fact that people could understand the strange voice even if they didn't speak English. The specific descriptions the victims gave, like a face living in his brain and feeding on his spine. Or another hearing trumpets before they fell asleep. The entire product feels bootleg, something you'd find accidentally or on the dark web. I could easily see someone watching this and scoffing at it. Ooh, a PowerPoint presentation probably made by edgy teenagers. And, that's fair. Yet it was the matter-of-fact way both the scares and the lore were delivered that made me lose myself in it. Also, the music is great. If you're even somewhat curious about analog horror, I would say give this one a go. Now, normally I would go through the honorable mentions, the horror films that are good but didn't scare me, but I have a whole other video series just about that. So check those out in the playlist, and if you want to support the channel, throw me a subscribe. It means a lot. Second to last, and the last short film I'll talk about today, is The Kid in the Camera. The Kid in the Camera is upsetting in a way that, honestly, I have trouble articulating. I'm not sure how I feel. I just know it's bad. Its style is anything but realistic, but the effect feels too real. The Kid in the Camera moves like a children's storybook mixed with a PSA. We only get still shots, and the narration is rather pleasing. This, along with the lack of music and static feedback, lend a lot of authenticity. This is perfect, because we feel comfortable, maybe even a little skeptical, like, what the hell is this cheap 80s children's program I'm watching? And then, without changing the animation, the sound, none of it, the story shifts, and it slowly dawns on you the horrible situation that's occurring. And because it happens so gradually, and this is important, realistically, you suddenly feel trapped, powerless to stop it, and you have no choice but to watch it play out. The kid in the camera will likely upset parents the most, but as someone who is only raising a stubborn sheepdog right now, every time that broken camera gets used, I want to look away. And last up is Longlegs. This is quite a talked about movie, so I'll say that I have my issues. Longlegs isn't so much bursting with ideas, but juggling them after half a bottle of Maker's Mark. There's a lot going on, and the attempts to tie everything together feel a little sloppy. But here's the thing. In terms of horror, in terms of establishing tone and exploring weird and unnerving concepts, Longlegs understood the assignment. I knew quickly that this would be something special. The kind of shot they used to introduce the villain and how much pale whiteness took up the frame was a surprise from the normal shadows that we would expect. And it was followed by opening credits that simultaneously thrilled me and put me on edge. At its core, this is a detective film about the hunt for a serial killer who's able to kill by proxy. And these crimes, even when they're just being described to the main character, make other crime thrillers look clean by comparison. But what truly scared me was when the horror pivoted, like the metal spheres that acted as sound conductors, or the mannequins, or that shot of Nick Cage screaming what sounds like either song lyrics or the last words of someone in agony, screaming so loudly it was like watching a soul being ripped apart. I didn't even mention the sound design that rumbles and scratches and distorts every scene. Even if the story didn't go supernatural or demonic, like if it just played it straight, the film itself would feel haunted. Watching Longlegs feels like the filmmaker is throwing a garbage bag over your head and kicking you down a hill. It's just wild.
The father?
Yeah, he didn't do it halfway either. Stabbed his wife 61 times before the blade snapped off the handle.
What about the kids?
What about him?
How many wounds?
You can read about it in the file.
Did I miss anything? Be sure to comment below and check out my playlist here with the other videos in this series. Share the video, subscribe. I love doing these videos, so any and all support means everything. And as always, thanks for watching.